Hello and welcome to Soul Love with Kimness. I am Kim van der Sande, your host, and I'm super excited to share another episode of Soul Love with you, where we share inspirational and empowering stories from the heart. We talk about the beauty and the shadows as both are part of the ascension journey, to remind you that you are powerful, you are magical, and to have trust in what you feel to be true deep within. Enjoy this next episode of Soul Love. Before we start the next Soul Love conversation, I want to invite you to check out my amazing book, Activating the Flower of Love, a sacred guide for manifesting your deepest desires and highest calling. This sacred book, filled with powerful tools and activations, will guide you to open your heart to the beauty and wisdom within you, empowering you to create the life you deeply desire from the foundation of love. You can find Activating the Flower of Love in all the major online and offline bookstores in ebook or paperback, or you can check it out through my website, kimness.nl, where you can also discover the different ways of working with me and the latest updates on new starting programs. Enjoy this next episode of Soul Love. Everyone, to a new episode of Soul Love, and today I'm honored and excited to share a sacred conversation with Kerry Rasenberger, and I welcome you within this sacred space.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
It really is, and I already shared it a couple of times, but I have a lot of amazing Instagram friends, and we just shared a conversation before, but I love that we've been connected online for a while, and I really like what you're sharing, and it so resonates also with the message I'm sharing into the world, so it's so aligned. But how there is now this connection, because sometimes we see things like we see the beautiful post, but that we now get to share a sacred conversation. So I'm really honored, and you're on this mission of really also self-love. And I'm wondering, to everyone tuning in as well, what has activated you to be on this path to now guide and coach others in loving themselves and really stepping in their light and in their purpose? Well, what really sparked you to say, okay, this is the journey? Or yeah.
I think it's finding my own journey. I've had growing up a lot of hardships and challenges and tough life lessons. We all do, right? We all have times of suffering. And I think the greatest gift in life I've ever learned is when I really learned to love myself, which is having regards for my well-being and happiness. It changed my life, right? And in learning it's not selfish. We were kind of brought up at a time, don't do this, that's selfish.
Yeah.
Don't talk about your feelings, don't feel this, don't be happy of being successful because that's being, greedy. And what I've learned is, now that I truly love and care for myself like I would a best friend, I have so much more to give the world. I have so much more kindness and compassion to give my children, to give my best friends. But it's also taught me that I can set my boundaries, which I didn't have boundaries before, right? And I could get walked all over, taken advantage, be on eggshells. And when I can set healthy boundaries for myself, it benefits me. But self-love also taught me that if somebody's not aligned with my morals and the love I want to give the world and different things, it's okay they aren't in my life. And where I learned as a child, try to make it work, try to fix it, right? Try to fix them, help them. What I learned is that we all have to do it ourselves and fix ourselves, heal ourselves. We can give support and love to others, but they need to do it themselves. So learning and teaching people more about self-love and that they can heal and reach their full potential while loving themselves and building resilience. What a greater gift to give anybody to help them, right? And it's all already all within themselves. It's just, what I do working with clients is just help them find it.
Yeah, I think you already shared beautiful things, but it starts with really acknowledging who we are in all that we are, and really letting that rise, because then we also have more to give to others. And I love what you shared about boundaries, because sometimes self-love or love, it can sometimes only have this softness. But what I notice in my own journey as well, love is also truth. So as
Mm.
you start to love yourself, you will feel what is out of alignment. You will feel what doesn't resonate anymore, or what creates this contraction in yourself. And I know in my own journey as well, for me was like an old paradigm was people pleasing, wanting to keep the harmony everywhere I was. But in that I lost myself because I was constantly focused out there and trying to make everyone else happy, but in that a constant disconnection. And I think it's so important for just in general, our biggest contribution to the world is really honoring who we are and loving ourselves, because then we can give from overflow. Then we're not in this state of constantly being triggered or activated, or maybe even putting yourself back, that secretly being angry at the other because you're taking care of them but they don't see it. Like for a lot of us that's also a pattern, instead of okay, no, first taking care of myself, and then we're also in a more healthy dynamic with other people. So I think it's really, yeah, I think it's really a beautiful message where we're all being guided.
And I'm glad you mentioned, also, we can fall into those patterns, right? Because
Yeah.
we didn't learn better. I had a client mention the other day, in a toxic relationship, went back to that person because he's safe.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, let's really define what's safe.
Mm.
Safe is comfortability, safe is love, safe is being your authentic self, safe is, safe is comfort,
Yeah.
right? And, if you might want to add more things, I mean, safe is the
Yes.
beautiful things that bring us comfort. But a toxic relationship is really a comfort zone versus being
Mm.
safe, right? And
Yeah.
so when we get into that comfort zone, because it's what we're used to, the patterns we've learned, it might feel like it's safe, but
Mm.
what I want everyone to think about is it really what safety is defined as, or is it really the comfort zone and the pattern you're used to doing?
Yeah.
And and so when we do patterns, it's so important. A big word I use is, and this is what I had to do, is
Mm.
become aware of the truth, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, and awareness is a huge word for me. Um, when we're aware of the truth of what we're actually living in,
Mm.
truth is facts, right? Like if it was raining in my office and I had
Yeah.
20 people, everyone would say, yes, it's raining. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But if we talked about how hard it's raining, it could be an opinion depending where you live, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we're aware of the truth of really going on, it's important, to write down those lists, especially if
Mm.
you're in a toxic relationship. Write down the patterns and even the patterns that I was doing.
Yeah.
I'm always people pleasing, always trying to make that person happy, always, losing myself, giving up my worth, giving my value, right? That's the truth. And
Mm.
so, and then being aware of the narrative, the false narrative I was living in because I was holding on to hope. Hope can be beneficial, but hope can also hurt us, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Hope can also lead us in a path that we aren't living in the truth and we're only living in the hope. So for me to find self-love was really coming to radical acceptance of what the
Mm.
truth I was living in
Yeah.
and really accepting the false narrative that wasn't the truth. How does
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, I
did you?
think that's really a powerful, yeah. Because and it already starts sometimes with the understanding that our mind likes things to stay the same, even if the same are not healthy, are going over our boundaries, are yeah. So and it's coming back to this space. I always love to, for me, my body is a beautiful, like, so my body always tells me like if something is in alignment or not, or is something serving me or not. Because when it's out of alignment, I feel this contraction. So it's really coming back to this subtle awareness, I think, of our emotions, of our body, of our field, as it's giving us messages. If a relationship is lifting us up, or if it's dimming our light, if a pattern we're repeating, if it's really beneficial, or if it's an old safety mechanism. And I think it's so important to create awareness around that. But it starts sometimes, it's also that's what I notice in my own journey. Sometimes there's something we still need to learn, until at one point we feel now it's enough and I'm ready to break the cycle. Or sometimes it becomes so challenging that our soul is calling us like, okay, to a halt, and says, now it's time to turn. But it really starts with again, love. Because when I love myself, I will notice when I truly love myself. And again, love is truth. I love that you shared that, because it is. When we're
Mhm.
no longer looking through all these paradigms, looking through all the perspectives, or really come back to, okay, just taking a moment within and feel if this really is serving me, is this really helping me, supporting me, elevating me, or is this like bringing me down? Or yeah, and I think it's, but then the biggest thing is coming back to love to really make the shift, because it starts with the awareness, but then it's okay, what is truly aligned to take this step? Or yeah, I think that's really beautiful.
And I loved one, I think you mentioned something so important is being aware of what's happening in our body,
Yeah,
because so many times things happen to our body before it even gets to our mind, right?
it is. Yeah.
If we get that gut feeling and we're around somebody that's draining us, right? It could start with that gut feeling, but then go into maybe stomach issues, heart palpitation,
Yeah.
sweaty palms. I would be, my jaw gets tense. My stress goes into my jaw, right?
Yeah.
And so if we get aware of our body symptoms and then start believing our gut, because our gut, unless we're living in a irrational fear, like being scared a spider's going to kill us,
Yeah.
that's like extreme
Yes.
irrational.
Yeah.
But our gut feeling is almost 100% right,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so really paying attention to how your body feels, and even asking yourself, after you leave somebody, how do you feel? How does my body feel? Do I
Yeah.
feel revived? Do I feel good, at peace? Or am I feeling drained all the time after I leave that person? And when we start paying attention to that, that's all part of self-love too, right?
Yeah.
It's paying attention to what happens in our body before it gets to our mind. And then our mind, like we've mentioned, our mind likes to go back to old thoughts, right?
Yeah.
And our mind likes to tell us things that aren't true a lot if we aren't paying attention.
Mm.
So understand, our thoughts. Is that really a true thought? Or is it a thought being controlled from fear,
Mhm.
insecurity, past, comfort zones?
Yeah, it
And,
is.
and that all gets us more into awareness, right? And for me, awareness was one of my first steps of really starting to love myself,
Mm.
and also to have compassion with myself when I hurt, to talk to myself like I would talk to a friend instead of beating myself up with that negative critic. And I
Mm.
don't know about you, but I haven't met many people that haven't had times where they're battling that
Yeah.
negative critic that makes us feel bad, right?
Mhm.
And so self-love is learning tools and learning techniques, also how to work through those, right?
Mm.
Self-love is allowing ourselves to feel the pain that
Mm.
we don't want or we avoid because it just hurts so darn bad. But to feel the pain, to work through it, and working through it, it gets us to acceptance, right?
Yeah.
Whatever we need to accept from that pain that's going on within.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think every one of us being on this journey, we're all being invited to finally face that pain and to finally feel, because that's the only way that we can move forward. We can keep neglecting these parts of ourselves, but they only get louder. I know it's in my own journey. For me, at one point, it even made me very sick. And of course, from the mind, you can say a lot of other things, but it was my soul calling me, Kim. Now it's time to finally witness yourself, to finally face your deepest shadows and no longer be afraid of your intensity, of your power, of your, and it's going back to this basic instinct. When we're a baby, we know what we want. We know the messages of our body, of our emotions, but we are so being learned to navigate on technology, to navigate on what society wants from us, to follow the footsteps of our family instead of really honoring, okay, what do I truly want? But even as a baby, I noticed that when my girls were younger, like they knew which person they wanted to be with or not. But somehow we feel, okay, a baby, no, everyone needs to hold the baby. But the
Mhm.
baby already know, like they are so in tune with their, like we can learn something from that. And I think for a lot of us, it's relearning the language of our body, of our emotions, of our field, because it's helping us. Like I'm also all about sacred yeses. Like when we get an invitation, we immediately know if it's aligned or not. But it's the
Mhm.
initial inspiration that we are being invited to follow instead of the mind that kicks in after 2 or 3 minutes and start to think, okay, is this logical? Is this practical? Oh no, this is coming out of my comfort zone. I'm not doing it. And this can happen in very traumatic experience, but also in joyful things. Because even things that look very joyful, and but if we're not used to that, our mind will say, okay, no, I'm not going to do this. No, no, what is fun? I don't know how that works in my body. That feels unsafe. Being happy, that feels very unsafe. So we're in a way, I think, also programmed, and it's just creating awareness. It's not about putting but it creates awareness. We're programmed sometimes to just be in this stress mode and to be in this constantly pushing yourself harder and really going out there instead of going within. Like, and that's what for me the self-love journey is. It's really going within and relearning who you are in your essence. And the wounded aspects, they hold wisdom. Because I always love to share like our field maybe is this air balloon that wants to rise. Our soul wants to experience, it wants to elevate. But there are a lot of slower vibrations like bags of sand that are hanging on our air balloon. And we can keep neglecting them, but then we're never rising. It's only when we're trying with love, and that's where love comes in. Because if we try to cut them with being harsh, or because I really love that point as well, the mind, the inner negative talk, if we try to push them away with negative talk, they come back, or we put even more energy into the bag. And in that way, we don't rise at all. No, it's with love. Then we see them, and suddenly they start to shift and they elevate with us. And I think that's the biggest invitation. Be loving to yourself. And when you notice the inner critic gets activated, witness it. There's a wounded inner child that maybe wants love, or why would you push it away? Why would you shame it and blame? And I know this inner critic also well, but it's again starts with the awareness. Like, okay, this is not a loving thought. This is not my divine self helping me. No, this is the limited self or the wounded self, or yeah. So I think that's really the powerful shares.
In everything, the biggest gift of life to me is really allowing love and grace to come into your life. And that brings the beauty with it, right? And,
Yes.
and it's so important what you said. It's relearning. And you're right, the innocent and the purity of children, they sense and they know what's good and what's not.
Mm.
And they haven't had society trying to teach them a different way, or toxic people, manipulation, gaslighting to make insecurities. And one thing that's beautiful is I've been lately getting into studying from neuroscience
Yeah.
scientists and getting into neuroplasticity. And one thing that is incredible that I learned of a research fact, no matter what age we are, we can rewire our brain.
Yes.
As long as somebody doesn't have Alzheimer's or something like that, we can
Yes.
rewire our brain. And what really helps is starting with something simple that you believe, right?
Mhm.
And something simple that you believe starts breaking down the negative beliefs and
Mhm.
starts creating a reward neural pathway of the
Mhm.
positive beliefs, right? And just as a simple example, somebody that's, let's say, struggled with their weight, right? For them to say, I love my body, that's
Yeah.
just not going to be believable. They aren't going to believe it at all. And
Yeah.
it's going to be hard, and maybe even resentment trying to say that. But one thing they can start with is, I have a body, or I'm grateful for my body to allow me to breathe.
Yeah.
One thing that is believable to them is, and everybody's different. So it's what's believable to you to start rewiring your mind so you can start working on other things for growth or a healthier life of what you want to go to. So, for anybody out there listening to this, what is something you're struggling with? What
Mhm.
are the negative core beliefs that you are hurting yourself with? And then what is one step of something believable that you truly believe, and start simple? Because when we start simple, those little steps are the hardest, but they lead
Mhm.
to such huge growth. And
Yeah.
seeing the amount of growth somebody gets is so rewarding.
It
It's
truly is. Yeah.
wonderful.
I love that. And it's such a beautiful gift that you're bringing here because it can start with being grateful. Like I know there was one point in my life where I was just grateful that I woke up every day. And
Yeah.
now there are so many things, but there's always something to be grateful for, even if the sun that comes up or a beautiful cup of tea, but it shifts our energy. And what I loved what you shared earlier, and I think it's so aligned for this as well, because sometimes we can feel like, okay, I really want this self-love, but where do I begin? And you
Hmm.
said like it start with the subtle things, and it's really it's choosing something different that creates like massive change, but it's already understanding, like if we keep doing what we're doing, we keep the same. But if we're taking our attention away from the negative path or the path we don't want, or the neglecting of ourselves, or but we focus to gratitude, or we focus even to something other beautiful, or it already makes so much shifts. But it starts with the believing, and I think that's what I love about this podcast as well. Every one of these stories, they show like how life sometimes a very challenging moment
Mm-hmm.
totally changed their lives, and awakened their mission and their purpose, and out of that something beautiful came. And it's really honoring, and I think sometimes we also need hope or inspiration, or these stories really help to feel like, okay, because we've all been in those moments where we were in this very deep place, but
Mm-hmm.
it also awakened something within us. And I think we're all being invited to come back to this fire, or to come back to this belief, or this knowing. And that's what I love about your neurographic, as you share pathways, that we can change whenever we want, but it's a decision. And it doesn't mean that, because sometimes we make like, okay, if I want to change, I'm radically changing everything, but that's not good for our body, for our safety mechanism. It is in the little steps, but the little steps make the big ones. But it starts with today. So when you notice a negative self-talk, already start to shift to love. Or when you notice your energy draining, start to see what you're grateful for. It's these little steps that creates, but it's a consistency. I think that's also an important, because sometimes you feel like, okay, I'm doing this, and then you're busy for a week, and then you get challenged, and somehow you're out of like this. That's also this, your vessel. It's what you take with you your whole life, your body, yourself. This is your best friend. Like, people come and go, but this will be with you forever. So it's also your greatest gift to work on yourself, and to be loving to yourself, and to, yeah, so many things shift there. Yeah.
And little steps are so important, because those little steps lead to long-term gratification instead of instant gratification, right?
Yeah.
And today in the world we live with, everything's instant, social media, you see
Yeah.
everybody's happy moments,
Yeah.
instant happiness, but that's not really their true life, right? Every moment of their true life, that's not it. Or we get instant gratification when we might get our hair done. And that's a feel good moment. That's, enjoy. But those little steps for long term gratification, that's to me the definition of inner peace,
Yeah.
right? That's the definition to long term happiness.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean we don't have a bad day, but we're
Yeah.
content with life, right?
Yeah.
Having a bad day, that's just life. We all have bad days here and there, and that's just that moment's not our forever.
Yeah.
But just look at your little steps as, this is going to lead me to where I'm very comfortable and feeling happy in life
Yeah.
with
And
myself.
yes.
It's also with yourself.
Yeah. And it's because I think that's always important to remember. Like, we set goals, or we have desires. We desire to experience something, or to manifest something. But there's always a growth journey. So there's a part of us that is still believing something else, and that is coming up. So for me, it's always when we get challenged or activated, or when we get triggered, it
Mhm,
means it is because we're growing. We're
mhm,
choosing to step out of our comfort zone. We're choosing to do something new, or we desire to manifest something new. And that's why the challenge is coming up, because there's a part of you that wants to be seen and acknowledged, so that you can become the version of you that gets that. And that already makes a shift, because sometimes we can go into this pattern like, okay, I'm doing my best. Why is this coming up? What am I doing wrong? But you're not doing something wrong. You're choosing to grow, and that's why it's coming up. But then we need love to finally see the truth of what is happening. And that's how we can elevate. And I think that's a mindset shift that needs to happen. Like, we're constantly growing and evolving, and that sometimes means facing things in ourselves, or feeling something we don't want. But it's only in truly feeling that. That's what I notice in my own journey. I'm being invited to surrender each time even more. So not the path that my mind wants, no, to really surrender in this now moment. But when I truly surrender, the energy starts to shift quickly, instead of me resisting, instead of me trying to control, or trying to make it happen. But then sometimes you stay in it for a day, or a week, or a month, instead of me surrendering and saying, okay, show me, universe, God, body, whatever way feels aligned, but show me. I am present. I'm ready. I'm open with love. And then sometimes things shift in a minute, and suddenly a whole new thing opens up. But I think we're being invited to be present. And it's really this space of inner peace that will help
yeah,
us move forward. It's not in the perfection our mind wants, or in the manifesting the biggest things. No, because that's still a thing in the moment. That's not because after that, when you've manifested that, the new thing will come. And it's really embracing, okay, this is just part of earthly life. This is part of growth. And when you can accept that, it creates more peace, because then we know the power is in our resilience, not in always being happy, because that's also not the journey. Yeah. So I think it's
Yeah, and it's just I love that you brought up the word resistance.
mm,
When we resist, we struggle longer, right? And everything you just said is so meaningful because being in the presence, surrendering to what it is, what we need to learn, and following it with the love of ourself,
yeah.
like we would give our friends, it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt still, but we get through it, right? And we learn from it, or we might see a new perspective. And that whole mind shift of changing our mind into a healthy mindset, right?
Mm,
Because I don't even want to just say positive mindset because we
no.
aren't positive all the time. That's just
Mm,
not life. What do we have? Is there like 30 different emotions? And
mm,
if we were happy all the time, everybody would be like, woo,
yes.
all the time. And that's
Yeah.
just not life. We aren't supposed to be experience the emotion of happiness all the time. But what can we learn? And I found, you're so true what you just said. When I resisted
Mm,
and just resisted and fought it, I fought those, some pain for a long time. It made me struggle so deep. It made me miserable, right? Because I'm a pretty, warm, happy person in general, you know what I mean? Like a mindset. But when I resist, it took me to a
mm,
dark place.
yeah.
And that dark place isn't who I am.
No.
And so when we understand when we resist and we aren't allowing the invitation to come in, we're causing more suffering than we need to experience.
Yeah.
And so we're in charge of our own suffering, right? It doesn't mean we don't get hurt by other people, but how we handle it is our responsibility. And if we, decide we're just going to suffer our whole
Mm,
life, then that's what we're going to do,
yeah.
right? So looking at that in different perspectives and taking it as an invitation. And, one thing we mentioned
Hmm.
earlier is
Yes.
triggers are our teachers, right? So what is our trigger teaching us right now
Mm,
that we haven't healed deep inside? That could be a childhood pain that we've been, avoiding because it hurts so much as a kid.
yeah.
So, and if we allow that, the amount of growth and where we get, I just can't wait to keep growing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful experience.
It is. And that's the true empowerment. It's knowing we can handle whatever comes on our path. And yes, we feel, and yes, we fall and we rise again, but there's the power. That's the true power. It's the
It is.
resilience, and it's the knowing, okay, I can handle whatever comes, and it's okay to feel. It's okay to, yeah, I think it's really beautiful. So I want
Mm.
to invite everyone to check out your links and to check out your Instagram account. I will place the links below this video or audio, whatever way you're tuning in. And I really want to thank you. And I want to invite you, if there was one last suggestion or tip or advice you would want to give for now to everyone tuning in, what would it be?
Trust yourself in your journey
Yeah.
and allow yourself to feel.
Yes.
And remember, when you feel, you go and you start healing. And one last thing, what I had to learn, we are always worthy. We are
Mhm.
born worthy, okay? And the only time we lose our worth is when we give it away.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really beautiful. Thank you. I want to
Oh, thank
thank
you so
you.
much.
Yes, it really was amazing. It's really beautiful to connect, and I want everyone to tuning in. Thank you for being here, for sharing, and feel free to like, comment, whatever way, subscribe, because it really helps the sharing of these empowering conversations. So, and for now, I just wishing you all much love and looking forward to seeing you in the next Self Love podcast. So, see you next time. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you for joining this episode of Soul Love. If you want to find out more about what we do, you can find it below. And I'll see you in the next episode. Much love.